Hi, I'm Amy Koranek. I'm in the Sculpey Design Center taking a look at the 3D oven-safe silicone jewelry mold. This mold makes it really easy to fill with liquid Sculpeys and give you the ability to make your own unique jewelry pieces. The silicone mold was designed to sit nice and level on your work surface. It's partially clear so that as you're filling the mold with liquid Sculpeys, you can see how high up each color is going. That makes it easy to layer colors and also to go in with a tool and marble the colors together. The silicone mold comes with these two little rods, and on top of the mold are these little brackets. Those hold the rods in place so that all you have to do to get started is to thread either an eye pin or some jump rings onto the rod, then line that up with those little brackets, and that makes the eye pin or the jump rings, the findings, dip right down into the liquid Sculpey and holds them in place in the center of each shape as you bake them in your home oven. The shapes that are included in the mold are a half round pendant, the bullet shape, which is my favorite. There's a rectangular pendant and a square pendant. And then there's two each of the cubes and the cylinders for making perfectly paired earrings. Next up, let's take a look at how to fill the mold with liquid Sculpey and how to release the pieces from the baked mold to start your own jewelry creations. So first off, what we want to do is make sure all of our liquids that we are going to use in the project are stirred. Always, always, always stir your liquid Sculpeys before you use them. I even stir them each time I use them. So not only, like when I first get them, I always stir them before I add them to any kind of a mold or project, just to keep all the ingredients in there working well together. Now, if you're going to use your etch and pearl tools to stir like I just did, make sure you're gentle with them because the etch and pearls are such valuable tools in all the other parts of our clay life, and we don't want to damage those. So. All right, that is the translucent turquoise, which I've stirred. I stirred that by removing the cap completely, as you saw, and these two are already stirred. I did that off camera so you wouldn't have to watch me stir. The jewelry mold needs to be placed in front of you on a very level surface, and you can see that it's almost, it's quite clear. That way you can tell how full your different cavities are. And the piece that I want to show you how to make is this bullet shape. It is my favorite shape. I think it's my favorite because it has such a big area to work in, and I like big areas. It gives me a chance to use a lot of different colors of clay and a lot of different techniques. That bottom area, which is the translucent turquoise, it has some mica in it. So what I'm doing is just squirting a little translucent turquoise liquid Sculpey in a silicone baking cup. Now, silicone cups are fantastic because they come in lots of different sizes. They're easy to get, they're inexpensive. You can buy them in the baking section of your craft and hobby store. And then when you're all done, you can just get as much liquid out of that as possible and then throw it in your oven and bake it, and then peel the residual skin of baked liquid Sculpey right out and discard that. So I really love and rely on these little cups for lots of projects. So I just put a little spoonful of, that's called Stardust mica. And I like mica because it comes in lots and lots of random shapes. It's not like pressed out like glitter where all the glitter would be the same shape. This is very random and it makes a really neat organic look. So I'm stirring the mica flake into my translucent turquoise with one of these purple clay modeling tools. And these are great for stirring liquid Sculpey because they have flat bottoms on the edge, which rides really nicely on the bottom of that cup. They're easy to clean up. They're completely compatible with liquid and with all polymers. So I've really started using these a lot more in my liquid life than I did before with clay, and I love these for that reason. Just clean them off with paper towel and they're ready for the next use. Okay, I tried to just make enough of this specialty blend just really to make that tip on the bullet. So I didn't make a lot of it. I'm just going to squeeze my little flexible cup and pour this right into the mold. I'm watching from the side to see how deep it's getting, and I want it to be about 1/3 of the height of that bullet shape. So just letting it drip in, and that looks good. Now I could take the time to scrape this one clean, or I'll just set it aside for now, but that's what I'm talking about. You can just pop this silicone cup right in the oven and bake it with the mold, and then just peel that little skin out and you've got a clean cup for working again. Now this bullet shape has this beautiful tip, and I always want that to come out just as perfectly as it can. So I'm taking the etch and pearl tip of the smallest etch and pearl and going all the way down into the bottom and just kind of feeling around to find that little tip and make sure that my tip of my etch and pearl goes all the way into the tip of the bullet shape. That way any air bubble that's down in there can be released. Because you know the place that an air bubble is going to occur is right in the prettiest spot of all. So just take your time and make sure that the air bubble that's down in there is released, and now we're ready for our next layer. Wipe your tools off with paper towel and they're good to go. So I hope that you can see how from the side you can see how high up the translucent turquoise is going. Next I'm going to add a layer of peacock pearl, also one of my favorite colors. I'm going to tap this just a little bit. As I'm looking in there, I can see some air bubbles. So why not tap those out while I can see them? There we go, and they all popped. Next I'll add the peacock pearl, and I'm just going back and forth. And I'm going to look from the side and make sure I'm getting it the depth that I want it. You can really see that color now. So I'll try to hold this so you can look at it from the side. You can see the big difference between translucent turquoise and the peacock pearl. Now the final color would be the navy metallic. I'm just opening the twist top all the way up. Let's tap that a little more because I can see an air bubble, and I might as well release it while I can see it. And I'm going to top this off with the navy metallic. And this has already been stirred. I did that before off camera. Alright, I am filling almost all the way to the top, but not completely flush. And the reason is because we want to add a finding down into, we want to set the finding right in the liquid clay so that the liquid clay will bake around it permanently and make it really secure in there. And believe it or not, that finding is going to take up just a tiny bit of space. Now let's talk about the types of findings you can use before we go forward. You can obviously use eye pins like this. Now this eye pin would be way too tall for that bullet shape, so I would have to cut this down. And here's a tip for you. If you want to make it super secure, you could just grab the end of the eye pin and bend it up into a little hook, so that when you set that down in there, that the liquid will surround that little hook, and make it impossible for it to be accidentally pulled out. So anything that you can fit onto this little rod is fair game for the anchoring attachment for your jewelry. While I have this out here, let's talk about some other ways you can use findings though. This is called a double connector, or it almost looks like a double jump ring. That will fit nicely on this little rod, and in this situation you would have a whole loop down inside the liquid Sculpey that would get baked in. Sometimes I like to use jump rings, and I love oval jump rings because they're longer than they are tall. That hangs nicely down off the little rod, and a lot of that jump ring would be embedded down into the liquid clay. A lot of times the way I choose which finding I'm going to use is just based on what color metal it is, how I want my finished piece to look. I like my findings to match the overall feel and the overall look of my finished design. So a lot of times I just base that on color. Alright, so to set this in place, we want to dip it down into the liquid, and then as I'm coming down toward the cavity, I'm looking for these little brackets that are built into the silicone mold. They're little round brackets with a groove in the middle, and that holds the rod perfectly over the center of the shape. Now, while it holds it perfectly over the center of the shape this direction, you might need to do just a little bit of tweaking with the positioning of it, you know, to make sure it's perfectly in the center this way. So I just slide that over with a tool. Now I'm ready to backfill that cavity to top it off with a little more of this navy metallic to make sure it comes flush all the way to the top. Okay, and then that one would be good to go in the oven. Now, sometimes when I'm messing around with my mold, I'll accidentally get a color somewhere I don't want it. Let's say I'm filling this cavity and then all of a sudden I've dripped a color I don't want in that cavity. Well, it's not all a loss. Obviously, I don't want to squirrel around with this a lot trying to get that clean. When I already have this one filled, I want to make sure that this one is staying filled just like I wanted it. So I can very gently go in there with a little alcohol on a Q-tip swab and pull that color back out. So this is a tip for cleaning up your mold. You can even get a lot of it out just with a Q-tip without alcohol. And that will help you keep the colors where you want them, and it won't be a total loss that way if you can clean a mistake up like that. All right. Another thing I like to do is fill the entire mold before it goes to the oven so that I can do numerous projects at once, but I'm not going to take time to fill this one on camera, but that's what I do a lot of times is I'll plan out my projects and I'll fill the whole mold so that I get lots of pieces to play with in just one baking. Okay, make sure your rod's in place and then this is ready to go into the oven. This whole mold has been baked. Here's the piece that we designed together earlier in the video, and as you can see I went ahead and just filled the whole mold because I like to make a lot of use of my oven time. Next, what you want to do is remove the little rods, and sometimes they might be a little stuck in there, but I'm just spinning them a little bit and pulling them right out. Now please put these somewhere safe that you can always find them so that you can use them again. And I want to show you how to take the pieces out of the mold. First off, what I would do is pull the mold away from the baked piece. And you do want to make sure the mold is completely cool. Do not try to take these out while the pieces are hot. The pieces won't be at their peak strength until they completely cool, so let them cool. I'm pushing up from the bottom with one finger, and you can see that that little cube is starting to emerge, and then I can just kind of rock it out like that. Now sometimes the pieces will have a little rough edge. This is really common with molded pieces. Even in other art materials, this is a common thing to have a little bit of a ridge between the liquid and the mold. And so if you want to, you can just clean that up really gently and really easily with, you can use wire cutters, you could use an X-Acto or anything sharp that you feel comfortable with. Even like little sharp scissors will take a lot of that edge away. So there's a cute little cube that's ready to be turned into an earring. Let's take this big half moon shape out. It's an easy one to get out. Just push from the bottom and you kind of rock and roll one edge up, and there it goes. Now I can just pull it out with my fingers. And this one I did in a layering of colors. I used gold and I used metallic garnet and bronze and black and made kind of a neat Grand Canyon looking piece. The findings I used here were these little connector springs, and I just put those on the rod and made sure they were right above the top. So this one will be strung all the way across. So there's the half round. Now, if that's how to get them out of the mold, but here's a little tip for you if you ever have some trouble getting them out. I've come up with a few ways that I like to use to help loosen the piece and help it slide up from the mold. Let's work on the one that we molded together. First, what you would do is separate the silicone mold from the clay, and then you could go around the edge with a needle tool. Now, please be super careful. Don't poke your design with the needle tool, and please don't poke the silicone mold with the tool. because it's very sharp. It's super handy, but it's super sharp, and you don't want to put a little poke in your mold unnecessarily. So I've loosened that around the edges. Now I'll just reinsert the needle tool like so, and then I'm going to use some of the Sculpey thinner, and I'm just going to put a drop of it down alongside the needle. Then I'm going to drag the needle through that Sculpey thinner and kind of all the way around. Now I start again by pushing up from the bottom and just grabbing it as it comes out. Now you can tell that's a little bit oily from the Sculpey liquid thinner. So I just want to clean that off with paper towel. I'll clean off my little art piece, and I'll clean off the needle tool as well. And that piece is ready to go with a finding. So it's super pretty. Okay, you can also do that very same technique with water, where you would go around the edge, and then instead of the liquid Sculpey thinner, you could put a little drop of water down in there, and that will help release it as well. So that's how to use the silicone 3D jewelry mold. It has these beautiful shapes that give you a really good launching point for designing unique and beautiful jewelry that anyone would want to make for a custom creation for any outfit.